Welcome to Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff. This show is designed to highlight the work of leaders here in the United States and then beyond. Today with us, Jodi Giglio. And Jodi is a New York State Assemblywoman. Let's all welcome Jodi Giglio. And Jodi, it's really very nice to have you with us. And I want to first start by asking you how long you've been an Assemblywoman, and then what prompted you to run?
Yeah, thanks, Jean. It's so great being here with you today. You're such a wonderful woman, and you really are quite a role model for many women. So I want to thank you for that and for everything that you do. So I ran for office for Assembly in 2020, and I took office in January of 2021, and it has been a very interesting year in Albany. So I have made many friends, including Rebecca Seawright, who I know is a very good friend of yours, because I think that it is so important that once you get elected, you are elected for all the people. And it does not matter whether you have an R or a D before your name, you are all in it for the people of the state of New York. And we must work together and find common ground in order to be the best for our constituents. We are public servants.
Yes, and what prompted you to run?
Well, before I was an Assemblywoman, I was a town council person for the town of Riverhead for 10 years. And what got me into that is I have my own construction company, and I had 146 acres in Quogue, and they put a moratorium on my property, and really I felt that they were taking away my property rights. So I was angry about that. That was in 2007. And then in 2009, when I tried to build a building in downtown Riverhead, they gave me such a hard time. And the downtown was so blighted that I started knocking on doors around me to local business owners, finding out if it was just as difficult for them to try and make downtown Riverhead as beautiful as I wanted to make it. And they said it was. So I started the Riverhead Business Alliance. I was the president and the co-founder of the Riverhead Business Alliance, and I had 30 businesses that paid for me to have a secretary that could send out emails whenever the town board was proposing legislation that would hurt the local business owners. So I did that for a couple of years. And then the business owners asked me to run for office, which I did. And I was an elected official for 10 years in Riverhead, very supportive of the business community and of all my constituents with all of their needs. So after 10 years of that, they asked me to run for higher office for New York State. And I'm happy to say that I did, because I enjoy my job very much. And I had a tremendous amount of support from not only the town of Riverhead, but the surrounding towns to where I was successful in the election.
And what about the people that you represent? What are the important factors to them? What really matters to them?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jean. And there's so much diversity in my district, but I think the main concerns are water quality, the environment, and education for the children, in making sure that everybody is educated and that they have a good shot at life with the education that they receive. So I think that our local school boards do a great job in trying to educate our kids, and we spend a lot of money doing so, only for them to leave Long Island. So getting good, high-paying jobs on Long Island is very important to me and the people in my district, in order to be able to sustain to live here on Long Island.
And talking about the children, during the COVID pandemic, what happened to the children in your area?
Yeah, it was very difficult because everything was done by Zoom, and it was for the protections of all the teachers, the wonderful teachers that we have, and all the students. So it was a very trying time for the children in the school district. I know my children were happy to get back to school this September. And although they have to wear masks throughout the day, they're happy to be back in person education.
And how did the pandemic affect your constituents?
Well, it was very difficult, and there was a lot of fear. I have a very large senior population in my district, but working with the supervisor, we did everything that we could to provide services as far as food deliveries and even grocery shopping for many residents, and helping my friend Brian Tiemann, who had a GoFundMe page where he raised $50,000 in order to go and deliver groceries to various people that were requesting things. So working very closely with the business owners to make sure that they were able to provide food to go and also prescription services to go. So that was a very big thing, getting the grocery stores involved so that they would package the groceries, we would pick them up, and then we would deliver them to the residents. So that was a big challenge for a lot of my residents during the pandemic.
And as we move out of the pandemic, does food insecurity remain a problem for Riverhead and the North Fork and the other areas that you serve?
Yes. So the food is, I mean, fortunately, I am in a very big farm district, an agricultural district, and the farms were one of the first businesses that were allowed to be opened. So the farm stands were opened, and they provided ordering forms online where you can order your produce from the farms, and then you could just pick it up at the farm stand. They would just put it in your car. It would be prepaid by MasterCard. But as we are coming out of the pandemic, I'm finding that with inflation, the cost of food is going up significantly. So as well as other businesses that the pandemic has affected, as far as backlog and wood supplies and milling and construction products and the food chain, and just being able to have a crop and being able to raise cattle. And there were many challenges for many industries across the United States that have caused backlogs and delays in deliveries, and also in the growth of the crops.
And for our audience, we are with New York Assemblywoman Jodi Giglio, and she's discussing her district or her area of where she presides over, and the problems that they face now and the problems they faced during the pandemic. And Jodi, I want to go back a little bit. Before you were educated, I assume, in New York State. What were your beginnings like?
Well, my father was in the Air Force, so he got transferred to California when I was 11. So I went to junior high and high school in California, but used to spend my summers back here on Long Island in Wantua. And then when I was of age and I could move away, I moved back to New York, and I've lived here ever since. I worked full time during the day. I lived in a small studio apartment with a hot plate and a microwave, and took the bus to and from work, and went to school at night for 10 years at Stony Brook University, pursuing a degree in business administration. So I was very thankful for that education, although I didn't finish because I did get married and I did start to have a family. It was challenging to work full time during the day and then go to school at night. But my background is mainly business. As I said, I've had my own construction company since 1997. I am recognized by New York State and by New York and New Jersey Port Authority as a woman business enterprise, because I have owned my company 100% since 1997. And I do project management, and I build many things. I ran a steel company for a few years and actually provided all the steel for Southampton Hospital, the emergency room. And I'm also a local 138 union contractor.
So you're a hard worker.
Heavy equipment. Yes.
You're a hard worker, you're a businesswoman, and you are a New York State Assemblywoman, which brings me to the following question. As a New York State Assemblywoman, how important are women's rights to you?
Yeah, Jean, that's such a great question. And it really is, because the glass ceiling exists. So we need to break through that glass ceiling. And I'm very happy to co-sponsor Rebecca Seawright's bill in the Assembly. Although we're on different sides of the aisle, we can all agree that women's issues are important. And we need to make sure that we have the specialists and what we need as women in order to meet our needs. So equality for women through New York State and throughout the country is very important to all women. And I think that we're making headway, but we have a lot more work to do.
No question. And as a woman, women's rights are vitally important to me. And I still can't understand why the Women's Right Amendment is not part of our US Constitution.
Yeah, we've come a long way, and I think that as more states start to adopt great legislation, as my counterpart Rebecca Seawright has put forth, I think that that will be a lead for other states and then for the United States to follow along to make sure that there's equality not only in the workforce, but as far as respect and as far as opportunities that are available for women.
Getting back to Long Island, you mentioned that the environment was very important to you. And I've also read that you're also very interested in waste disposal and what happens to our garbage. And right now on the eastern end of Long Island, we really don't see much recycling. Do you have any plans in place or any ideas on how to change that?
Yeah, so as a councilwoman in the town of Riverhead, I found that there were many cottages on the shorelines of the water fronts that we have in Riverhead, which are on the Sound and on the Bay. And I put forth legislation and worked with the Suffolk County Department of Services to require upgrades to those sanitary systems so that during high tide, the tide wasn't just coming in and washing out the effluent. So I was successful in getting that legislation adopted. And now we have Suffolk County Department of Health Services that as of July 1st has mandated the alternative waste system for all new construction or substantial improvements to homes. So that's good legislation that was put forth. Then we also have the waste problem that we have where New York State DEC estimates that every person on Long Island produces about 4 pounds of garbage a day. So trying to get that number down with recycling is very important. And getting waste off Long Island is a tremendous challenge. We need to find new markets for recycling products. Right now, all of our recyclables go out of Long Island, either upstate New York or out of New York State, and they're buried. So we think that our recycling efforts are really coming, helping the environment, but it's just pushing it off to another state or another area of the state. So we need to find new markets for recyclables, such as plastic and glass, and we need to try and minimize our waste as individuals as the best we can.
Yes, and I think recycling is something that all of the eastern end of Long Island needs to address because I live in Southampton and there is no recycling of glass and plastic, and I'd like to see that change.
Yeah, so a lot of townships that do not have the sole source of the separation of the garbage disposal, a lot of times they take those to these major facilities, and maybe one day we'll take a tour there, Jean, but they have these major facilities that actually separate out the recyclables and the C&D, which is construction and demolition debris, and they put it into separate bins and they are recycling. The problem is that recyclables are no longer a commodity where they were for many, many years. When I was a councilwoman, I revamped the garbage contracts with our Carter and actually got the garbage pickup cut in half. And then we were not accounting for any of the businesses and the stores, such as the big box stores along Route 58 that have garbage. So what I did was said, if you're going to pick up garbage in your Carter in Riverhead, you have to get a license with the town of Riverhead and you have to report to the town of Riverhead exactly what the tonnage is that you're picking up from all of the private businesses that weren't under the town garbage program. So that was very fruitful and very interesting. We had an F from Stony Brook University Studies when it came to recyclable when I first took office in 2010. And by the time I left, we really have a great model for other townships to follow. And we actually received a lot of money because in the garbage contract that I negotiated, 20% of whatever they were able to cash in the commodity for would come back to the town of Riverhead. And then we used that money to give to our school districts and to the high school that had the Key Club that would go out on education of how important it is to recycle.
Yes, and I'm with you. Recycling is vitally important, and I hope more of that takes place in the future here on the eastern end of Long Island. Now, Jodi, one of the things that you started to talk about was how you liked to work with the other party. You're a Republican, and you mentioned that you'd like to see a coming together of parties to create a more change and to make the country a better place. Talk a little bit more about that, if you would, please.
I believe that although we may not agree on everything, we can always find common ground, whether it's sitting around our kitchen table or if it's up in Albany making legislation. You can always find common ground, and it's very important to be able to have a relationship with people, even if you don't agree with them all the time, that you can come to a consensus, at least on some things. And I think that's so important because you can't change people's feelings and how passionate they are about their feelings. You have to be understanding of why they're doing it and maybe come up with a different angle on how to achieve the same goal, maybe in a different way that is, something that we can both work on and agree to together. So I found that very successful in being in my first year in Albany, in working with other legislators from the other party and trying to ask questions as to why the legislation was being brought forward and to understand the importance. And I have voted with the other side of the aisle many times, which was against my side of the aisle. So I really take an independent view of legislation and the importance of making sure that I am serving my constituents and what my constituents would like me to do.
Yes, and there's no question that a divided country is a weakened country. And we've seen a lot of division the last number of years. And I like hearing that you're very interested in working with the other side to create change and positivity for your constituents. And Jodi, when you look back on how you got into politics, and for those who are interested in getting into politics, what advice do you give?
I think it's very important to get involved. So if you are a Democrat, you're a Republican, or you don't know what you are, it's very important to get involved. There are many committees. There are committees in every township and every county and in every district throughout Long Island that you can go to these meetings, you can sit in, you can listen, you can reach out to the leaders, you can listen to both sides and decide which side you want to help and get involved and have a voice in government so that you are heard and that you are represented properly. So I think that it's very important to get involved and to really understand what your candidates stand for. When I was an elected official in the town of Riverhead, I would have Boy Scouts come and talk to me all the time about issues and concerns that they had within my township. And I would explain to them why and how it happens and what it takes to get to where they want to go and ask them to be part of the process. So I think it's very important bringing everybody in. I think committees are very important. If there's an issue in your township that is something that irks you, that you think needs to be handled better, you should go to your local supervisor or your legislator and say, I'd like to form a committee and start looking into this. And that person would then advertise for that committee. In Riverhead, I started the Alternative Transportation Committee because it was very important for physical education. Physical activity and also a healthy environment. So we had the former Grumman facility that had a 3-mile trail that went around it. And I worked all the years that I was in office to make a contiguous trail, which it now is a 10-acre contiguous trail around the perimeter of the former Grumman facility that is used by many from all over the state and all other states. They come here for the enjoyment of that trail, which is being built on every day. So that was an issue that my residents came to me and said was important, is finding recreation that is free, that is safe, and it is safe because it's within a fence. It's not out on the road. So that's one of my, that's one of the things that I'm most proud of in being an elected official in the town of Riverhead, is completing that trail and driving by it and seeing all the families that are riding around it. And it was free. It was free education. I mean, free activity, especially during the pandemic when it was difficult. You couldn't go to the gyms to exercise and you couldn't find any exercise equipment to do exercise at home. So it was very important. And I was happy to see that there were people that were using the trail and getting out as a family and enjoying that time.
And this pandemic isn't over yet, but are you hopeful? And are you thinking that it's going to end soon? What are your thoughts?
I'm hoping. I've been vaccinated and I encourage people to get vaccinated, but I think it's very important that you talk to your doctors and you figure out what's best for you. I think that these mandates, that one size fits all, I'm a little concerned about because I think that everybody's got different situations, whether they're medical exemptions or religious exemptions. I really think that there is much more to know about this vaccination. So there are things that concern me about the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic safely for all of us, for our families, for our kids in the school, for our healthcare workers, and for our businesses and the patrons of those businesses. You know, we need to make sure that we are following the Constitution of the United States and making sure that our liberties are not being impeded upon.
Yes, and for the audience, we are with Jodi Giglio. She is a New York State Assemblywoman, and she is talking about some of the problems facing her and how she's tackled them. Now, Jodi, you represent the North Fork, where all the vineyards are and where tourism is strong. How has the North Fork been affected by this pandemic, and are they coming out?
Yes, well, I can tell you that the wineries have been very successful. As we learned during the pandemic, one of the businesses that were thriving was the wine industry and the people just sitting at home. And it was really a depressing time for a lot of people, but you know, it's good to see that we're going to start pumpkin picking season soon, but during the month of June, we saw everybody out picking the strawberries. During the month of July, we saw everybody out picking the peaches. And now, you know, we're into pumpkin season. So it's great to see everybody out. The vineyards are packed, the breweries are packed, and people are enjoying sitting outside and just being able to have conversations. So I think that the North Fork of Long Island has come out of it very well. Our businesses are still struggling. One of the biggest problems that all of them are having with the vineyards and the businesses is trying to find help. So I'm happy that the unemployment ended and looking forward to seeing people get back to work. I did have a job fair the other day, and I spoke to many of the healthcare professionals that are private businesses that are going into people's homes and helping the elderly or people that need help. And the mandatory vaccinations have forced a lot of these people to quit their jobs and to go and you know, flip burgers somewhere where you get paid the same amount of money and you're not required to get the vaccination. So that's a concern of mine, is the healthcare industry and making sure that we have the staffing that we need in order to staff the hospitals. I'm disheartened by the fact that one of these healthcare companies in West Hampton Beach told me that they cut their beds. They cut 30 beds out of their facility because they don't have the staffing for it. So it's a big concern for me with the healthcare industry and the mandatory vaccinations, in that people are walking away and they're finding other careers. So we need to make sure that our residents are being taken care of and that, you know, they're not waiting too long to get emergency care. So I think those are the things that we have to really pay attention to now.
Yes, and as you look forward, what do you see in, say, 5 years from now for you?
Well, I enjoy very much so being an assembly person. I have had other opportunities that have crossed my path, and I take it day by day and look to what is best for myself and for my family, and also for my constituents. So yeah, I like doing what I'm doing. I really enjoyed being in the private sector too, which I dabble with now because I am so busy in Albany and being a state legislator. But And who knows where I'll be in 5 years from now? Hopefully somewhere where I'm happy, because I am happy in what I do now. And I think that's very important for any career choice that you have, is that you're happy doing it, because that's a path to success.
I agree completely. And for those watching who are very young, what advice do you give to young people who are just starting careers?
I think it's very important to make sure that you're happy doing what you're doing. And if you're not, then make a shift and do something that you like doing, because it's as you start out, you're you're learning and you're becoming more valuable to the companies that you're working for. And if you like what you're doing, then you could be at the top of the company someday. So I think it's very important to be dedicated, to make sure that you're on time, that you're doing the best that you can do at any job, and you'll see the fruits of your labor and you will rise to the top. So I think that it's very important to make sure that you like what you're doing and that it's not just a temporary thing. You need to look to the future and see what's best for you.
No question. And it is no question. And it is my belief that hard work, education, and then following a career path where you can go out and get a job is all very important. And of course, you have to like and love what you do. Jodi, we have about 40 seconds left. What would you like to leave the audience with?
I just want to say it's very important that you reach out to your local legislators. We are here for you. We are public servants. We work for you. And it's very important that if you have a need or something that you think could be done better, that you let us know and we will work with you towards that. And Jean, I just want to thank you very much for having me with you today. It's really been a pleasure, and I think you're a wonderful host. And I know you're going to be successful on your show, and I know you love doing it. It clearly shows.
Thank you very much, Jodi Giglio. This concludes Successful Philanthropy. Our guest today, New York State Assemblywoman Jodi Giglio. I'm Jean Shafiroff, your host. I'll see you next week.